Level 1. 0. The level where you find out it isn't about money. You are standing in a kitchen at 11 at night doing arithmetic you already know the answer to. $40 until Friday. Rent in 9 days. The car makes a sound now, a new one, and you have decided not to hear it, which is a decision a person can actually make and hold for weeks. You have $0. Not debt. 0, which looks like nothing happened, which is worse in a way you can't explain to anyone, because a minus sign is at least evidence. 0 is just the absence of everything with no story attached. Here's what the whole video is about, so let's put it down now. You think the problem is that you don't have money. The problem is that you don't have the level. And those are not the same thing, and the difference between them is the reason this video exists. Because here is a fact that should be impossible. Give a man at 0 $100,000 right now. Tonight, no strings. Statistically, a meaningful share of those men are back at 0 inside 5 years. Not because they're stupid, not because they're weak, because the money arrived without the level attached, and a level is not a number, it's a set of things you know in your body that you did not know before. Every lottery story you have ever heard is this. Every inheritance that evaporated. Every athlete who signed for millions at 22 and was broke at 34. They were handed level 6 money while standing at level 1. And money always falls back to the level of the man holding it. That's why nobody skips these. Not because it's forbidden. Because the skip doesn't work. So what is level 1 if it isn't the 0? Level 1 is where you find out that you cannot save your way out of this. And that finding out is the point. You try. Everyone tries. You put $50 away. And 9 days later the car noise becomes a car event and the $50 leaves. And you try again in a month and something else takes it. And after the third time you conclude that you are bad at this. You are not bad at this. You are running a real-time logistics operation with no reserves, and the entire capacity of your brain is consumed by keeping today from collapsing. Long-term thinking is not a personality trait at 0. It's a luxury good, and it costs money, and you can't afford it. The advice does not help because all of it begins after the hard part. Every book, every video, every chart with the green line assumes a surplus already exists and only asks where to point it. Nobody writes the chapter about generating a surplus that isn't there, because that chapter isn't about money. It's about your life, and it's different for everyone, and it's hard. Here is what level 1 actually asks of you, and it is one thing. Pay yourself something before the Friday takes everything. Any amount. $5. It does nothing. Mathematically, it is a rounding error on a rounding error, and you will feel stupid doing it, and you should do it anyway, because the $5 is not the lesson. The lesson is that you are a person who takes something off the top first, and that is a completely different species of person from the one who saves what's left over. And nobody has ever gotten out of here as the second kind. You do it on a Friday. You move $5 before you move anything else, before the rent portion and the gas portion and the portion that goes to the thing your kid needs. And it takes about 9 seconds and no part of your life changes. You sit there afterward feeling slightly ridiculous. There is nobody to tell. There is no version of that sentence that sounds like anything. I moved $5. Every person you could say it to would be politely confused. That's how every one of these levels arrives, by the way. Quietly, with no witness, in a form so small that describing it out loud makes you sound like you're avoiding the real problem. You don't have savings at 0. You have the first version of a habit that every level above this one is built out of. Level 2. $1,000. The level where you learn to restart. It takes 5 months, and it does not go in a straight line. Nothing at this level goes in a straight line, and that's the entire content of the level. You get to 600, and something takes 400. You get to 900, and something takes all of it. You have restarted this 3 times, and there is no montage for restarting. There's just a Friday and a decision you make alone. Here's the thing you learn at 1,000, and it's the one thing that cannot be given to a person. The 1,000 doesn't make you feel safe. It makes you feel afraid. At 0, you had nothing to lose, which was terrible and simple. At 1,000, you have something, and losing it puts you back at 0, and going back after knowing what this feels like is worse than never having left. You acquired an asset and a fear in the same envelope. You start guarding it in ways that are not rational. You drive on a bad tire for 6 weeks because a tire is $180. And $180 is a fifth of everything you have. You know the math says fix the tire. The fear says the number is the only thing between you and the version of your life you just escaped. Then the emergency comes in month 6, because it always comes, and $800 leaves in an afternoon. You sit in a parking lot and you don't cry, because crying is for people with the surplus to feel things. And then you do the thing that this entire level exists to teach, and it takes 4 seconds and nobody sees it. You put $40 back in the next Friday. Not for motivation. There isn't any. You restart the machine the way you'd restart a machine that broke, mechanically, without ceremony, because the alternative is not having a machine. The Friday you restart, you almost don't. You have the $40 in your hand and every argument in the world for keeping all of it. Because you just watched 800 vanish and the wound is 4 days old and $40 against that hole is a joke that isn't funny. Your thumb hovers. Then it moves. Nobody sees it. There is no witness to the single most important financial act of your life, which is a man who just got knocked down putting a fraction of nothing back into the thing that failed him, on faith, with no evidence, on a Friday. That is level 2, not the $1,000. The restart. And this is precisely the level that money cannot buy for you, which is why the men who get handed $100,000 fall through it. They have never been knocked back and returned without a story about what it means. The first time life takes $800 from them, and it will, they read it as a verdict instead of weather, and they stop, and the 100,000 starts draining because nothing is being restarted. You have now been knocked down and come back 3 times. That callus is the actual asset. The $1,000 is just where it's stored. You don't have money at $1,000. You have proof that you restart, which is the only proof that matters at every level from here to the end. Level 3, $10,000. The level where you buy the ability to say no. Something changes at 10,000 and it does not show up in your account. You get a text about work, a schedule change, a new demand, some indignity from a manager who has been building toward it for months. At 1,000, that text moved through your body like current, because at 1,000 that job was the only thing standing between you and the parking lot. You read it. Nothing happens. $10,000 is about 4 months of your life. For months where rent gets paid whether or not that man is pleased with you. And the text arrives into a body with 4 months of floor underneath it, and the body simply stops producing the chemical. You didn't buy freedom at 10,000. You bought the ability to hear bad news without your hands going cold. Then you start saying no, and this is the level. Small ones first. A shift you don't want. A favor you'd have done at 1,000 because you couldn't afford to be a person who says no. You say it, and the sentence comes out flat and unremarkable, and the world does not end. And you think about it for an hour afterward because the size of what you just did is invisible to everybody but you. The first real one happens on a Thursday afternoon. Someone asks you to absorb something that isn't yours, in the tone people use when they've already assumed the answer, and you say that doesn't work for me. Then you don't fill the silence. That's the part you didn't plan. The silence runs about 2 seconds longer than silences normally run, and you let it, and then somebody else fills it, and the thing moves off your desk. You walk back and sit down slightly stunned. That sentence was available to you every single day for 11 years, and you could not physically produce it. And today it came out flat and unremarkable, and the building did not fall down. Here's what you understand later, and it reframes your entire past. Every negotiation you ever lost, you lost before you walked into the room. You lost it at your balance. The raise you didn't ask for, the boundary you didn't hold, the job you didn't leave, the apartment you didn't argue about. None of that was courage. All of it was arithmetic, and you were running the arithmetic of a man with no floor, and the arithmetic was correct. Leverage was never a personality. It was a balance sheet wearing a personality. And this is the second level a check cannot buy, because a man handed money without this level still says yes to everything. He still can't hear no. He has the number and not the floor, and so he spends the number trying to purchase the feeling the floor would have given him for free. You buy something around this time. One thing, small, the first purchase in years that wasn't strictly necessary. And it feels almost illegal. You've been in survival mode so long that spending on yourself trips an alarm somewhere. You let the alarm ring. You keep the thing. A man is allowed to be a person, and the ones who allow themselves nothing for a decade tend to detonate eventually, and the detonation costs more than the thing ever would have. Then the boredom arrives, And it's dangerous, so name it. The system works now. Money in, money stays, number climbs. It climbs at a few hundred a month, which means the million is decades away, and you did that math at a red light, and you have not stopped doing it since. This is where most people quit. Not at 0. Here, at 10,000, where the plan is finally working and the working is finally unbearable. You don't quit. You also don't get a reward for not quitting, which is the honest description of this entire level. You don't have wealth at $10,000. You have 4 months of floor and the first no you ever said for free. Level 4. $50,000. The level where you meet the drop. The market falls 19% in March. 50,000 becomes 40,500. $9,500 gone in 11 days, which is more than your entire first 3 years. Evaporating while you eat lunch and answer emails and are a person. Here's what you need to know about this moment, because it is the level that ends the most journeys. You are not being tested on your intelligence. You know the chart. You know the 200-year line. You know every crash was a buying opportunity in retrospect, and you know it the way you know the capital of France, completely. And it will not help you at 3 in the morning. You are being tested on your body, because your body has never watched $9,500 go backwards. Your body carried this here $40 at a time, and your body is now producing the exact chemical it produced in the parking lot at 1,000. And the chemical does not know your net worth. You open the app at a red light. You shouldn't. You do. The news is loud, and it has a reason attached, a serious one, the kind that makes recovery sound structurally impossible. And the terrifying part is that the reason is real. It is always real. Every one of these has a genuine, unprecedented, well-argued reason why this time the thing does not come back, including every single one that came back. And here's what saves you, and it isn't courage. You have felt this exact feeling before. At $1,000, when 800 vanished. The feeling now is the same feeling. Identical. Same hour of the night. Same phone. Same darkroom. The number multiplied by 12 and the sensation did not change at all. The feeling does not scale. That's the discovery of this level, and there's no way to be told it. It is the same size at every balance, forever, which means the only variable is whether you have already learned to sit inside it. And you learned that at $1,000 in a parking lot for $800, which was the cheapest tuition you will ever pay for it. That is what it means that nobody skips a level. The man who gets handed $500,000 meets this feeling for the first time at $90,000 of loss, with no training, and he sells, and he calls it prudence, and the money starts its walk back down to the level of the man holding it. You don't sell. And you keep contributing on schedule into an account that is losing faster than you can add to it, $700 into a hole that opens by $4,000 a day, which feels like bailing a boat with a spoon, and is in fact the highest returning money you will ever deploy. It recovers in 7 months. Your best financial decision was not a decision. It was the absence of one. You made money in that crash by being too stubborn to open a form. You don't have a portfolio at $50,000. You have a nervous system that survived, which is the one asset on this road nobody can transfer to you. Level 5. $100,000. The level where the second worker shows up. You cross 6 figures, and it feels like a Thursday, because it is 1. Then a week later you check a statement, and the account went up by more than you put in, and there are a few $1,000s in there that you cannot attach to a single hour of your life. That money came from the money. Read that twice, because for your entire existence, every dollar you ever held arrived because your body carried it. And this is the first dollar in your life that arrived on its own. You are no longer the only worker. You have hired a second one. He never sleeps, never gets sick, never has a bad month, never asks for anything, and he gets a raise every year that you don't have to fight for. This year, he earns $8,000. In 12 years, he out-earns the man you were at 0. The job changes here, and most people never notice it changed. For years, the job was to produce. From now on, the job is to protect the producer. Something else happens around this time that you almost don't notice. A car repair comes in at $900. You pay it. From savings, in one transaction, in about 40 seconds, and then you go back to your afternoon. Then you stop, because you remember the tire. $180, 12 years ago, that you drove on for 6 weeks because you did not have $180. That tire changed what you ate for 2 months. $900 just happened, and it was Tuesday, and the distance between those two events is the entire distance you have traveled, and it does not show up in any number on any statement. Then you do the arithmetic on what's left, and it's obscene. $900,000 to go. At your savings rate, 31 years. This is the most demoralizing afternoon on the entire road, and it arrives at the exact moment you're supposed to be celebrating. 100,000 is proof you can do it, and proof it will take the rest of your life, delivered together, in a parking lot. Then you run it again with the second worker included, and it's 14 years. 14 is not 31. The entire difference came from money you already have, doing what money does when nobody touches it. And every year from here, the gap between those two numbers widens in your favor, without your involvement, forever. Here's why this level cannot be skipped either, and it's the subtlest one. A man handed $100,000 owns the same second worker you own. Identical. But he doesn't know what the worker cost, so he spends the worker's wages, because money that arrives on its own is spiritually easy to spend. You know exactly what he cost. 12 years, and a parking lot, and 3 restarts. You will not spend him for the same reason you would not sell a dog. You don't have wealth at $100,000. You have an employee, and the only way to lose him is to spend him. Level 6. $250,000. The level where they finally call. The phone rings. You are visible now. That's what $250,000 buys you, and nobody mentions it in advance. You have crossed the line where the industry can see you, and it has excellent eyesight, and it has been waiting the entire time you were invisible. An advisor calls. Polite, credentialed, warm. He noticed your account. He'd like 15 minutes, no obligation. He uses the word holistic. He asks about your goals and your timeline and your family, and he listens better than most people in your life, which is not an accident, it's training. You go. There's coffee in a real cup. There's a folder with your name on it, spelled right, and you notice that you like how that looks, and you notice yourself noticing. He shows you a plan. It's a good plan. That's what makes it work. It is essentially your plan, with a fee attached. 1%. 1% is the smallest number he says all afternoon, and he says it quickly, in the middle of a sentence, between two larger numbers. 1% of $250,000 is $2,500 a year, and over the 20 years between here and the million, at the growth rate on his own chart, it is somewhere north of $200,000. More than you had in the account the day you walked into his office. He is not lying. Nothing he said was false. He presented a number in the units that made it disappear, which is what everyone does, and he is not a villain, and that's exactly the problem, because a villain you could refuse in 30 seconds. You ask him what the fee is in dollars. He answers honestly. He does the arithmetic out loud without flinching, because he has been asked before, and the not flinching is somehow worse than if he had, because it means this is normal, this is the standard. And he has said this number to 100 people who nodded. Then the invitations start. A private placement. A syndication with a 13% projected return, where the word projected is doing more work than every other word combined. A fund with a lockup. A product with a name like a fortress. And you finally understand your entire past. At 0, nobody offered you anything. At 10,000, nobody called. You thought that was neglect. It was protection. The absence of attention was the last free defense you ever had, and it expired and nothing announced it. This is the level that eats the people who arrive with sudden money, and it eats them fast, because they arrive at this level in week 1. The lottery winner gets these calls immediately, at level 6, while standing at level 1, with no floor and no restart callus and no crash survived, and everything in this room is priced for a man who has been through 5 levels of learning what things cost. You keep the boring fund. The best thing you can buy at this level is nothing, which is a very hard product to build a career around, which is exactly why nobody is calling to recommend it. You don't have opportunities at $250,000. You have an audience, and it is pricing your attention in basis points. Level 7. $600,000. The level where the money out-earns you. It happens on a statement in an unremarkable year. $600,000 produces around $48,000 a year on its own. Your take-home, after everything, is not much more than that. The second worker you hired at $100,000 now earns roughly what you earn, and the gap closes further every year in your favor, permanently, without your involvement. You sit with it, and there's no ceremony. There's a line item and a Tuesday and a slight ringing in your ears. You try to tell someone at dinner. You get 2 sentences in and you can see it not landing, so you shorten it. They say that's great and mean it, and ask if anyone wants dessert. That's this level 2. The largest financial event of your life happens entirely inside your own head, witnessed by nobody. And this will be true of every milestone remaining. Then the psychology flips, and this is the real event. For years, every decision was about upside. How do I add? How do I grow? Now, without deciding to, you start thinking about downside. How do I not lose this? You catch yourself reading about bonds on a Sunday, and something about the phrase capital preservation feels good in a way that should worry you. Because the man who thinks about downside too early wakes up at 70 having earned 4% for 3 decades. He exists. He'll tell you at a party that he plays it safe, and he'll believe that's a virtue. The flip is arithmetic, not cowardice, and it's worth naming precisely. At $1,000, a 50% loss cost you $500 in 4 months. At $600,000, it costs $300,000 in 8 years, and you do not have another 8 years, because money is replaceable and the decade is not. You are no longer optimizing for return. You are optimizing for time, and you have never had less of it than now, with more of everything else. That's the trade nobody warns you about. Every year this works. The money gets stronger and the clock gets shorter, and the two move in opposite directions for the rest of your life. You know a man who made the other choice. He hit a good number in his 40s, got frightened by a bad year, and moved everything into something that could not fall. He was not stupid. He was tired, and the tiredness had a reasonable argument attached to it. He is fine. He will always be fine, which is precisely the problem, because fine was the ceiling he installed on the day he stopped. And he does not experience it as a ceiling, he experiences it as prudence, and there is no way to raise it now because the thing he gave up was time. You resolve it by not touching anything. Same allocation you had at 100,000. Not because you're bold, because you priced the alternative, and the alternative is a slower version of the same life, and you did not spend 2 decades to arrive at a slower version of the same life. You don't have safety at $600,000. You have the first serious temptation to stop, and the arithmetic that makes stopping expensive. Level 8. $1 million. The level where you find out what it was for. It happens on a Wednesday while you're doing something else. You open the app for no reason, and it says 1,000,000 for $106. You look at it. You wait. Nothing. No feeling arrives. 20 years, and you are standing in a hallway holding a phone, and the whole thing is over, and it's a Wednesday. That's the last lie the number tells, and it's the biggest one. The million was never going to feel like anything. It was the scoreboard, and you were told your entire life that the scoreboard was the game. Then a week later, somewhere unremarkable, the real one lands. $1 million produces $80,000 a year, more than you have ever earned working. It arrives whether you get up or not. It arrives if you are sick, if you are fired, if you are asleep. It arrives every year for the rest of your life, and it grows, and next year it hires someone else. You have left the labor market, not by working harder than everyone. Some of them worked harder than you and are still working. You left because 20 years ago you started feeding a machine that has been running continuously ever since, and it never needed you to be exceptional. It needed you to be uninterrupted. That's the whole thing. Uninterrupted. Now here's the answer to the title, and it's the reason any of this was worth watching. Nobody skips a level because the levels are not made of money. They're made of things that only happen to a person over time. Level 1 is the habit of paying yourself first. Level 2 is the restart, learned in a parking lot for $800. Level 3 is the first no you ever said for free. Level 4 is a nervous system that has watched a number go backwards and survived it. Level 5 is knowing what the second worker cost, which is why you'll never spend him. Level 6 is being able to hear 1% and translate it into 200,000. Level 7 is knowing the difference between caution and quitting. None of that is purchasable. All of it is expensive. And every single one of those was bought with a specific bad night that you got through. That's why the man who is handed $1 million at level 1 does not stay at $1 million. He has the number and none of the levels, and the number leaks out through every gap where a level should be. And in 5 years he's back where he started, and everyone calls it a tragedy or a character flaw when it was neither. It was gravity. Money falls to the level of the person holding it. And it's why you, standing here at $1,000,000 with 20 years of levels underneath you, will not lose it. Not because you're careful, because there's no gap for it to leak through anymore. Look back at the man in the kitchen at 11 at night with $40 until Friday and a car making a new sound. He thought he needed money. He needed 8 levels, and the money was just the thing that came with them. And he could not have believed that at the time, and there is no way to tell him. You'd want to tell him that the 20 years were not the price of the money. The 20 years were the price of becoming a person the money would stay with. And there was never a version of this where he paid less. And the men who appear to have paid less did not. They just paid later and in a currency that was harder to see. Somewhere right now, someone is standing in a kitchen doing arithmetic they already know the answer to. $40 until Friday. A sound in the car they've decided not to hear. They are looking for the shortcut, the way everyone at level 1 looks for the shortcut. Because the arithmetic says decades and decades is unbearable. There is no shortcut. That's the bad news, and it's also the only good news in this entire video. Because it means the levels are not distributed by luck or by birth or by who your father was. They're distributed by who kept going. And that is the only ladder in the world where the rung under your foot is one you made. You are the same person at every balance. The levels just decide whether you get to keep what you're standing on.